All right. Let's let the world know we're live. Get something on my keys. It's no matter. Today is a scheduled stream. Haven't done this in a while. But I said I'd do it. I have reasons. I have reasons for this. Why I haven't been doing it. It's all good. Yeah, okay. So troubles. Reasons I haven't been doing it. Okay, last time you saw me work on, I did a bunch of videos that culminated in this wonderful piece. Sniper Get Down. Bunch of Nazis fleeing from an unseen sniper. I'm really happy how it turned out. The kit is not good, and so it's funny. I was just doing it kind of as a throwaway, like practice piece. But the weird collection of bits that I ended up with from what I think was a $1 or $2 kit from a vendor, I won it in like a silent auction. It turned out I was able to turn it into like a diorama that I will be turning in for a contest, which I'm I'm pretty jazzed about that. It's something. The reason I haven't done stuff since is because while I haven't been streaming it, I've been working on these British Desert Rats. They're more modern military, which I've done stuff like this before. I think I showed this on the stream previously once. If I can just out there for you. This is my most recent modern piece, and it's pretty similar. This is Desert French Foreign Legion troops, and also like right on schedule. I'm all congested. It's something. It's like I'm allergic to the webcam. Fuck. Oh well. And like one of my first and very successful dioramas when I got back into modeling was sort of like Vietnam era squad. I'm not a huge fan of this kind of thing, although I do have a lot of pieces to do pretty interesting dioramas from that era. The issue, I mean, the fact is, I have, I can see like 3 squads over in the corner here that like I'm actually excited to paint and everything, but I really want to get them right. And so, turn this down a bit so you can see my workspace a bit. So I decided before doing those 3 squads, I would get in some practice squads. And that's basically like, it's what the French Foreign Legion squad was. It's what the Nazis running to cover was. And now really, so I should also say this gathering of models. Am I missing one? Oh yeah, I'll put it here. This little gathering of models is actually 2 boxes worth of the kit I've mentioned in the description. I ended up, I don't even know if I like bought one of these and then was gifted the other, or if I was gifted 2 of them. Whatever the case, I ended up with, I didn't really care to have one unless I did buy it. I feel like I didn't really have British Desert Rats on the agenda in the first place, and ended up with 2 of them. So they became sort of a a double practice kit. And I've had to remind myself that these are practice runs. They don't need to be like, the final product doesn't need to be something that I'm like cool to show at whatever you call those model shows. A contest, a competition. Competitive. Doesn't sound right. Anyways, there's all sorts of model conventions or what have you when they, you put out your models and people judge them. And I don't win anything, but I used to when I was a kid, but that's because there's kid categories. It's easy to win those. I think I was better when I was a kid. Anyways, I'm getting away from myself now. So I haven't been doing the stream basically because I've been having trouble motivating myself to even do these guys, just out of sort of disinterest. Thanks. And I don't know. I guess I sort of got back into it. I started, getting my groove back and working on these guys. And so I've done a fair bit of work on these guys off camera. And then I basically ran into a problem where my Model Master White was giving me a lot of trouble on the highlighting. I almost don't want to put it on the brush, but I should just to show what I'm talking about. Shake it up. We can see a final product of why this was problematic, which probably won't come up too well on the camera, but yeah, it's really hard to get good lighting and focus and all that. It's been a weird day. I was hoping for like a big beam of sunlight, and I have not got it. Okay. This guy, you can't really tell. Damn, you can't really tell. That's really too bad. I wonder if I could put a comparison piece and maybe you could see the difference. Yeah. No, I think that's just natural lighting. I don't know. Basically, this guy, some of the highlighting is fine. Some of it is way too much, and it's because I had to like fight with the paint the whole way. Very much. I sort of mentioned this earlier about being better when I was a kid, but my memories of doing models years ago. I used to like dry brushing was my favorite part, and it's how I got some of like the best effects. And I wish I had some of my old work around to show that off, like show what I mean. But I've really, I sort of lost that groove that I had when I was younger. I lost my knowledge of painting practice. God, I hate the way these paints like string out. They get all over you. Ugh. It's foul. Foul. Okay. So shaking this up. Still seems real thin. And I think that it is very thin. Oh god. Yeah, you can see where I just put it. Kind of looks like it's just coming out white, but it's like you can see right through it. Like the pigment does not constitute the full of the paint, which is fine. You generally want your paint to like start Well, you don't want to start too thin, but you know, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so this is pretty thin. So what we can do, take a toothpick, and it's all crusty with white paint because I've been using it for this already quite a bit. Oh god, this is dangerous stuff. Dangerous, hazardous field. Stir it up a bit. Honestly, it doesn't even feel like there's any pigment in there, which is fucking weird. The other paints, they get a bit thicker. You can dig into some pigment at the bottom. But this is just like runny as hell. And, oh shit! I was just trying not to do that. It's fine. You know why? Because this paint is runny as hell. Yeah. Sure proves my point. The paint was so thin that I splashed a bit on this guy's arm, but I was able to quickly just like towel it off, and it only left like a tiny white residue, which is basically what we want to do for highlighting. However, doing that repeatedly to get the desired effect would be a fool's errand. It would be a wildly inconsistent game, I think. I don't know. I wouldn't count on myself to accidentally splash the right thing and then towel it off in time every time, and I wouldn't trust that effect. That said, I don't like the effect where some of this guy is so white it looks like he's been hit by a blizzard. So, as I remember dry brushing, you then take the brush, dry it off on the towel. Its problem developing here is now it's like there's hardly any paint on the brush because it's so thin. It all came off. It's weird. It's like they're making me work with a whitewash. Whitewashing. Cultural. This guy who I put in the thumbnail, he's the guy I feel has come out the best in terms of the overall paint scheme. Again, it's like you really can't tell, but he's the only guy that like the original camo scheme sort of came through properly, and I generally, this is why this is a practice run and an experimental run, is I generally messed up the camo on all these guys with a very liberal dark wash. All right, let's try and highlight one of these suckers. That's okay. Getting very flaky. It's not really something you want. That was actually it's going okay, but whole point of this is to do a little comparison because I was struggling with that paint. I was like, maybe there's greener pastures out there, so I went for the expensive official thing. Not because I thought it would be better because it's expensive, but because it's just the one that the people I listen to on the podcast use, you know? I listen to Miniatures Monthly, and they use Citadel paints as far as I know. And they say they use this one in their thing where they're talking about painting, and I'm like, guess we'll get that one. Okay, White Scar. This is a regular white layer. It should be the Citadel equivalent to what I was just using. I'm hoping it is, in fact, a lot more consistent, and it takes me back to my childhood days of carefree dry brushing. Although apparently there's like a bad sort of rap for dry brushing. Again, I'm tuned into this only through like Miniatures Monthly. Son, where were you when I needed you? Don't put your faith in sons. Caps are weird. No, they're probably designed to like not, dry over or whatever. Just painted some pills. Okay. Yeah, so apparently there's like and I guess I understand this. It's like there's this idea that like people who are lazy would just like spray paint black and dry brush. Just dry brush something like if you're doing Necrons, which are like silver robot monster men, then you could theoretically. Also, I just want to say this is already like it's stayed on the brush much better. So it is taking me back to my days. I don't know. The fact is that just like my old work that was good in my heyday, I had some good dry brush technique on there, and was not able to replicate it with this other paint. So let's see. And I should also say the paint I was using back then was the Citadel paint. So let's go for it. Ooh, that's nice. Oh, that's a bit much. It's I can't be as liberal with it as with the other paint, but it's much more effective. So, interestingly enough, this is only part 1 of the experiment. Might be interesting for you. Maybe you don't care. Maybe you're like, this sucks. You're already tuning out. Maybe I could tell you a story. I went to Iceland once. Went to Iceland once and went with a friend, good friend, Scott. Good dude. We went to Iceland together, and we decided we would bike to the Althing. You could rent a bike, and the Althing was like back in the sagas. That was like the Viking Parliament. It's where like battles happen and stuff over big shit. So we're like, all right, we'll rent out these bikes and then we'll go. We'll bike our asses to the Althing. It'll be epic. I think back then we still said shit like that. Epic. Boy, this highlight is going just like I remembered it. This is a success story. Not my other story, though. Not the story I was telling. I feel like the only like problem with this now is like shaking out the inferior paint that has infected my brush. Okay, sorry, I've left you hanging on my story. We went to the Althing. we biked there. I'm getting ahead of myself. We tried to bike there, and I realized that in my wild confidence that I could bike to the Althing. I hadn't biked in ages. Wasn't good, man. I was incapable. My legs turned to jelly. It's a long ride, man, and I had been a fool, but like, I really stuck it out until we were like so far gone that it was like, well, can't go back now. That'd be ridiculous. Again, my excellent companion Scott, he of much stronger and firmer and sounder health and leg, was able to sort of hitch my bike to his, and he was able to help pull me some of the way, a fair bit of the way. I should not discredit any of his action in this. And that's how we got to the Althing. I mean, I that's a cherished experience, and I would not have it if not for his great effort. It's great Herculean effort. I say with no sarcasm whatsoever. And anyways, we got there. It was great. Big old valley, streams running through it. Fucking Law Rock. That's cool, man. Old ass Viking shit. An old ass dope battlefield that we had read about in stories that made us want to go to Iceland in the first place. And so we were like, oh, this is awesome. By the time we got there, so late, the buses running back to Reykjavik weren't running. And it was like, well, shit, I guess we're going to have to bike. And I was like, oh my God, I don't think I have it in me. But I decided to go find it in me by going to an inn tavern that they had. There's a fancy ass inn in the Althing that we could not have stayed at. But they had a restaurant in there at tavern. And I ordered a screwdriver. They didn't know what that was. And I was like, it's just orange juice and vodka. So that was easy. And so I got drunk on screwdrivers, just like, not like sloppy drunk, but just like, buzz. I don't feel my legs no more. Fuck it. And, just got drunk enough to try and bike back, but like pretty early into the process, it was clear that I was not going to be able to do it. I did have a drunken encounter with some apparently wild goats in the plains of Iceland. So that's also an experience I'll carry with me, sort of chasing goats around in an inebriated state by the moonlight. Anyways, we had taken a city tour with a guy who did daily free city tours every weekday in Reykjavik, named Johan. And Johan had said on his free city tour that if we needed to get around the greater Iceland area, Iceland had like a non-existent crime rate. So, or thereabouts, and so it was safe to hitchhike. And like when he said it, it was like, all right, sure, whatever. I don't know. But in our state, the idea of getting a ride was pretty appealing. And every once in a while, we'd see someone coming down the road, and it's like, And I made this suggestion, or did I make this suggestion? I feel like I'd be too coward to. I played too much cross country Canada when I was a kid. The homeless guy, hitchhiker, steal all my crude oil, 500 gallons with his bare hands at knife point. It's a deep cut to a classic. It was basically the Oregon Trail for Canadians. It was like a trucker simulator. Anyways, whoever got the idea, I remember Scott pointed out pretty logically, like, well, we've got 2 bikes on us. How the hell we're going to have to get pretty lucky to get a ride that is going to be able to accommodate both our bikes. And we can't just leave them because we fucking rented them from the hostel we were staying at. It wasn't even like a rental. It was a situation where it was like just being at the hostel, you were able to sort of like give them collateral and then take out these bikes. It was dope. It's a great hostel, had a good hot dog stand outside. It was quality stuff. And anyways, despite that consideration, we were like, all right, well, let's give it a shot. And we did a bit of signaling to hitchhike. And like literally the first thing that came along was like a small, like maybe a hatchback or something, just like a cozy little vehicle with a trailer attached to the back. So like immediately the first guy we got was able to just like hitch our bikes up to the trailer, and yeah, he drove us home to Reykjavik. Nice guy. I don't think he spoke very good English. He was which like it's the younger people who speak good English in Iceland was my experience, because they've been taught. Also, you know, it's associated with more urban areas. But God, this guy has come out perfectly relative to the other guys. Man, oh man. Okay, this is going to be, again, difficult to express through this camera. This guy, yeah, you can see it a bit. You see at the bottom of his mouth, it's like too much white got on there. That's not a highlight. That's like his mouth, his chin got white. It's bad. It's like his teeth are, it's like his lips. It's like his lower lips are his lower teeth. Overbite. Shit. Also, just generally, the highlight is too strong throughout. And very, it's difficult. This guy's perfect. His edges and contours and whatnot are all highlighted as they should be. Brings out the fact that I did a very uniform wash, even if it was too dark and kind of ruined the paint scheme. Is honestly, this is something they talk about on Miniatures Monthly, but it's a very real situation I find, is when you're painting something like this, I think when you're painting models in general, you know, so you go through this step-by-step process that I am basically at the end of with these guys, wherein you you put on your base coat, you layer your main colors where you want them. Once you've got that all set up, you painted all the things, the colors that you want them to be, you apply a wash, and the wash is thin and the paint is dark and it seeps into the cracks, and that creates shadows. Then you highlight, and that gets like the higher edges, and it creates an artificial lighting. This is all great. Before you apply the wash, and I guess in my experience this time, even after you apply the wash, oh yeah, because I did some highlighting on these guys already in tan. I forgot, but the point is, there's a point in this process about midway through where your model always looks terrible. It always looks shitty. And you're like, what did I do? But like magic, once you have nailed the wash and the highlighting, it will look good again. So this guy didn't look that good before. Looks quite all right now. Again, the lighting is really bad. I'm sorry about that. Suns. Well, it's like I said. It's like Tigtone said. Don't place your faith in suns. Put your faith in matters of fact and reason and magic marbles. All right. Still some on this brush. Let's see. Hope it's not too dry. This guy who I featured in the thumbnail, he's got the best paint job. I kind of really want to do him right. You know, just for the sake of this stream, even though this white paint is definitely like, so this is a white layer paint. This would theoretically be the paint you just straight up applied for your colors. Like, I want this to be white. Boom. That's a white thing. And this should be equivalent to what I was using before that I was having so much difficulty with. Not equivalent at all. In terms of my experiment and comparison, this is significantly easier to highlight with. The other one is fine for as a layer paint because, you know, it comes on thin. You can layer it on. It's the whole idea. But, yeah, it's since you also want white as your ability to highlight and create that artificial lighting, that's it's not going to cut it in my experience. So what I have here also is, just in case the Citadel white was not what I needed, I picked up some Citadel Dry Rack White. So the layer was White Scar. This is all trademark names, whatever. Rack White is a Citadel Dry, and the idea of a dry, I'd not heard of this in my old days of painting, so I guess I was pretty much the fool. But it's, I guess it's like significantly more pigment than thinner or solvent, and so this is designed specifically for highlighting and dry brushing. So I thought it was a backup reserve in case the layer white was not equivalent, but like not usable or not tenable. But like I say, like I was kind of just trying to get back my childhood ability to do this with some ease, and that definitely provided it. But despite this being a just in case, I want to try it out. We're doing experiments today. Let's see how the Rack White Dry. Ooh, it's like gelatinous. Hee hee hee. Ooh. Well, this is like, it starts dry, but I'm still gonna wipe it off a bit because I got a fair bit of that white jello. Oh, that's phenomenal. It's very dry. So I don't need to do this very much. This will probably, I mean, this stuff is designed for what I'm doing, so, you know, maybe it's even better. So this guy would have had a nice camo scheme, and I messed him up. So I think we're safe to just highlight him. Gotta be a bit delicate with this. I've got a fair bit on the brush. Yeah, this is good. If you don't mind, a very, very robust highlight. The edges can really pick up quite a bit of the pigment. This guy's gun has like white detailing on it now, basically. Face turned out okay. So so far we're still up to snuff by my standards. One thing that's very difficult with this process in general is you so you deal with, like, this guy has like a gun barrel, and I'm like flicking the paint around, and it's such a thin little piece of plastic that it can be like knocked out of alignment, and I hate that, man. I hate it. Oh man, Veer's gonna shoot my models. I don't know about that. Although that would be cool. I could just set up the little Nazis in the background, have people shoot them. What we really need is little nanobot soldiers that we can wargame with. That'd be crazy. I heard an interesting thing. There's a guy at PC Gamer UK, I think. He was talking about, he was doing like an investigative report on Roblox, basically. And, he was looking at your sort of books of how guides to Roblox and oh my god, that'd be nuts. Anyways, this guide to Roblox, he was reading guides to Roblox, and these publications would sometimes have like interviews with prolific Roblox creators, developers, and these are generally pretty young people, but they've created ostensibly games within Roblox, within the framework of Roblox, that have a large number of players and generate revenue. Like, they make money through the Roblox insane economy system. So anyways, this guy was doing this investigative report, and he was reading these interviews with these Roblox creators. And one of the like stock questions is like, if you had infinite budget, no restrictions, if you could do anything you wanted, what game would you make? And like, the guy found that almost every one of them basically said, like, I want a game where you can fly around in a spaceship, and then you can land the spaceship on a planet, and it's like a whole planet, and you can walk around, and it's like the whole planet is like real, and it's like a full simulation, and you can go in space, and you can be on ground. And like, they basically describe the initial the sort of hope and ambition of No Man's Sky. And it's like, man, really? That's what you guys want to make? There was a good point on the Craven Crowbar podcast where this guy was talking about this. And that's like, I don't know. So if you ask that of someone, they're probably not going to say like Spelunky 3. That's a fair point. Maybe that's what we need, but it's not a dream. Quite pleased with this highlight. This is generally just a podcast with a dude being pleased that things worked out. Like, this is how, the thing is, with the paint barely coming off on the brush when I was drying it previously, like, I know that patience is a part of this game, but like, fuck, it was killing me, the lack of progress from like doing what I'm doing right now. I keep closing my paint up. It's like I guess I just don't want it sitting open, but whatever. Let's go back to this paint jelly. Paint jelly. Paint jelly, paint jelly. That's what I'm calling this stuff now. Paint jelly, paint jelly. Squishy, squishy paint jelly. You just poke the paint jelly, and then suddenly instant dry brush. Yeah, I mentioned this a bit earlier, but these guys do have some preliminary highlighting on them with a light tan. But I guess what I'm saying when I mention that is just like, for that reason, I have to be fairly gentle, sparing with this highlight, or else it's just going to like, this guy is going to be too bright. He's going to be like a way lit up light tan. Really, he's going to look like he got blasted by a blizzard like the other guys. And I sort of have that problem with the piece that I did with the French Foreign Legion that I showed earlier. But like I say, I'm not too worried about these ones. This is another guy that, his camo scheme didn't quite come through, but it's fine because he looks good. Hey, you guys got over there. He's all highlighted and everything. It's great. Put the highlighted guys on the paper towel. Even the bad ones. And I've done half of them. It's easy peasy. So yeah, someone was asking me like if Citadel miniatures are worth it. They said they were using I don't know, some other one. Hobby Color. Some other paint. And they said it was like the difference was not didn't seem strong enough to warrant the price difference that Citadel commands, which I understand it's like relatively expensive. But relative to Model Masters, I can say that this is I much prefer this. Although if like Model Masters may have dry paints, and maybe I could just pick that up and it'd be fine. But like the white layer from Citadel, I thought was superior as well. Let's save this guy for last because he's so good. I don't want to mess him up. We can do this guy. Oh shoot. If neither of these had served my purposes, I would have switched. I would have gone crawling back to an oil-based white for my highlight. But I don't really like working with oil-based. Again, this is very much like throwback to my nostalgic days of painting models as a youth. It's like I just want to get. I want to feel like some of the skills I developed back then are actually translating to my current endeavor. And it helps that, I guess it helps to use the same paint now that I was using back then. That's strange. I don't know how they sold me on this luxury paint back when I was a kid. I didn't have any fucking money. gonna definitely use this stuff. Gonna need some more of that paint jelly. Gonna need some more of that paint jelly. Paint jelly, paint jelly. Gotta get that paint jelly. Gotta get that paint jelly. Paint jelly, paint jelly. Paint jelly, paint jelly. Oh man, I should fill this air. Sorry. So I told the story about Iceland. Tell a story about rock camp. Yes, dear listener, I went to rock camp, rock and roll camp, a campground where you stayed in cabins like a summer camp, but you walked around with cool instruments, and then you played music. There was a show every night of the week, every day, in the daytime of that, before the show, you and your band that you got sort of sorted into. There's no sorting hat, but we went and looked on the rosters, and we'd all been mixed into bands, and we didn't know who we'd be with or whatever, but there'd be like a mix of skill levels, so the skilled people could help the unskilled people. It was a good system. Anyway, so yeah, every day you and your band that you got sorted into, you'd work on a song. You would then play at the show in the evening. Hopefully you would pick a cover, because original songs rarely went well at rock camp. It's not to say they did not encourage creativity or anything. It's just good luck writing a catchy tune in one day when you got the whole fucking Led Zeppelin catalog that the other players are accessing. The whole catalog of classic rock. You pick literally any pick. You could play Nirvana. You could play anything you wanted. Just so better you rely on that than the ability of like potentially 8 or so strangers of differing skill levels to coordinate and write their own song. So in a day. So anyway, that's how rock camp worked. I really dug it. I dug the sort of like campground space, but then I could like walk around with a guitar slung around me and just like rock out wherever I went. It's a good experience, a good growing, learning experience. Good, So anyways, it was generally like a summer camp, it was in a campground. It had cabins, So we, we stayed in cabins, and, each cabin would have a camp counselor that was assigned to that cabin as the supervisor, to just make sure the kids in that cabin were safe, stayed out of trouble, didn't go all crazy, Lord of the Flies kind of shit. And and to accommodate that counselor, that supervisor, like everybody, all the campers would sleep in bunk beds in like the main common area of the cabin, but then there'd be a back room that was just like the counselor's quarters, and that was just like a private space where they could keep all their stuff, and they'd be there a fair bit more than we would because we'd be out doing camp things. So anyway, So that's how that worked. On my last year at Rock Camp, Rock Camp, I think, accepts people up to like age 18, something like that. Anyways, so in your final year, I think in my final year, I was either 18 or 17. I think I may have just turned 18 because it was in the summer. And so they all the people of like my age group, all the campers in Rock Camp, all the dudes, it was determined that like basically we were of sufficient age to like take care of ourselves. Basically, it's like we were not assigned a counselor to our cabin, and they were like, well, don't make us regret this, just like manage yourselves. So we got a cabin just like anybody else's, and our cabin, like all the others, had counselor's quarters, but they went unused because we had no counselor. And what kind of weirdo was gonna be the one guy who sleeps in the back room while like everybody else sleeps in the common area in the bunks? So like, it's fairly obvious. But at some point, we decided that we were gonna, we were just gonna like search through the counselor's room, see what's cracking, what was back there. Not much. Then we found a fuse box, and we fucked around with this fuse box a little bit. Like at first we were like, wonder what that's for. And we're like, well, one way to find out, start fucking around with it. Counselor's quarters in the unused counselor's quarters of our cabin, controlled the power to the cabin across the road. And so we basically fucked with that cabin all week, man. It was dope. It was, because they were a cabin with a counselor and everything, and so they had to, they get in trouble if they disobey curfew and stuff, if they had lights on after a certain time. And so when they're all partying at night, playing their instruments, having fun, we'd all be lined up at the window. We'd be like, all right, cut the power. We cut the power on them and we hear their lamentations. Oh no, power went out again. Because we did this to them like every night. Oh, not again, blah, blah. And they never learned their lesson because we would do this to them when they were all hanging out playing instruments through amplifiers and like had lights on and everything. And then when we cut the power, they wouldn't like turn the switches off or anything. So then, in the middle of the night, when it was after curfew, we would then turn all their power back on, and suddenly the whole cabin would fucking light up, and they'd all be like, yeah, power! And then some counselor would come in and be like, hey, I thought I told you, and then we cut the power again, and they're like, no! And we just, oh man, what a great send-off year to just control the nightmares of some other people. All right. I mean, I can't really say enough how happy I am with this highlight. This this experiment that I've been doing. It's turned out very well. Yeah, it was. I probably did tell that story on the Tom Lando Files. I mean, that's the trick, is that the good stories you usually told already. Oh boy. Oh man. Does anybody hear about Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford? Got into some trouble recently. As he left a USB stick, Medieval Times Dinner and Theater, and said USB stick was turned into Gearbox, as it should. But Gearbox employees who received the USB stick checked out what was on it, and they found apparently evidence of a $12 million embezzlement scheme and a single pornographic video. It was a video of a cam girl. I can corroborate this because Randy Pitchford helpfully rushed to the podcast scene on the Piffcast to defend the pornography that had been found on his USB key, rather than maybe remaining silent about this scandal. And his defense, there's a lot of classics. You get caught with some bad material, or maybe there was something in your history. You got to come up with an excuse fast. There's some classics. Some classics are rarely used. Randy Pitchford's classic, that he was effectively viewing the pornography for educational purposes, one of those rarely used classics. It's a real gambit, let me tell you. His defense is that he saw a performer ejaculate, a female performer ejaculate, such that he could not fathom the amount of fluid that was generated, and it must have been a magic trick. These are his words. He says he needed to check out this magician. And God, it's funny to hear him say, so then they look on my USB key, and nobody thinks for a second that maybe I've only got one video on there because I'm watching it to learn. What the fuck? I just hope that guy, since he's clearly a moron, maybe if he gets fired, they can roll out Borderlands 3 a bit quicker. We can all be better for it. Magic trick. Yeah, I was the cam girl. I was the cam dude. That's also a funny bit about when he's talking about on the podcast, is like the host is like, oh yeah, this is that interactive stuff, right? And it's like, he's like, yeah, and you can like pay them money to egg them on. And he's like, oh wow, you pay them money? It's like, man, like you've never fucking heard of this? Like, what are you talking about? Oh, too much. This is the guy I didn't want to mess up, and I feel like I'm already messing him up despite all my optimism. Trouble is, like, once you get a bit too much highlight in a spot, you want to sort of even it out by highlighting the rest of it that much, so it doesn't look like just sort of an errant splash of white. But as a fool's errand, my friend, as you know, an episode of Peep Show where Mark shaves an unwanted beard, and he claims that what happened was he made a mistake shaving, and then he tried to correct it, and then the more he tried to correct it, the more he looked like an evil overlord. So he decided to just scrap the whole thing. And that's basically what I'm talking about here in model terms, is like you splash a bit too much white, and then you are like, well, I guess I better put some white around that to help it blend in a bit better and look a bit less like a mistake. And pretty soon you got a dude who looks like he's doing some snow ops in his desert camos. It's hard to. This sun is tricking me. Do you ever mod your models beyond painting them? I was into Warhammer 40k and I played as the Arcs. I mod all their tanks. Yeah, so I had a very a model I really liked that I don't know exactly where it is anymore, but I would have shown it as my example as like what I was trying to achieve with this highlighting. And it was, I mean, it was basically a dude who was entirely modification and no like original sculpt. He was just made from like pieces. It was part of like I think Games Workshop did a thing across various hobby stores where you did contests where you created like a monster squad basically who had very like you got a wild bundle of different pieces like skeleton pieces and zombie pieces and whatnot, and you had to make them into some terrifying mutant group. And yeah, my entry on that, I remember that was like one of my first real good guys. I feel, man, the sun's playing tricks on me now. Getting too shiny, can't see my progress. So yeah, I used to do mods when I did Warhammer stuff, and when I picked up this paint, I looked at some Warhammer stuff a bit longingly. I was like, maybe it's pretty expensive though. This stuff is not. These military dudes are very reasonably priced. There was a great model they had. This dude by the name of Horticulus Slimux. He is a farmer of Nurgle's garden, the Plague Lord's garden. So he's like a farmer with a bone in his teeth, riding a giant slug that has like a tiller on it. And he's like the Nurglings, the little demons of Nurgle, the little plague monsters. He has one like on a fishing hook, like hung in front of the giant snail. Just a very lot going on with that model. I like it. Evokes a lot. It's like the Tig tone of models. Though the other thing about like doing Warhammer type models is that there's like unofficial, like there's places, you can't, you're not allowed to play at the official tournaments at Games Workshop with these, but there are various like independent sources creating equivalents to Warhammer models, usually in their own style in some way. There's one called Cromlech in the UK that does like World War II orcs and goblins, and like I would love to do some of those guys. Like I think if my ideal situation for doing like a crazy Warhammer thing would be to do some like weird like Soviet goblins they have or something like that. Oh shit, I got that dead air again. Okay. What else is new? If you want to see me streaming elsewhere, you can catch me on Lil Boof's Twitch, where I participate in a now weekly show known as the Ornery Goblin Gang, where me and Lil Boofs herself talk about the news, what's we've been thinking about, movies we've seen. We comment on some stuff we found on the internet, and we answer questions that the audience asks, and we respond to audience stuff. We try to. Sometimes the audience doesn't give us nothing. Oh, I hear the new D&D product is going to be nautical themed. Probably well timed. With Return of the Obra Dinn and Pillars of Eternity 2. Really enjoyed Pillars of Eternity 2. Haven't talked about Pillars of Eternity 2 since I last did this stream. I guess that's something I could talk about. It is excellent. It is much like Pillars of Eternity. It's basically as close as you can get to like your PC D&D experience, like Baldur's Gate used to offer. And whereas Pillars of Eternity, the first, made that fantasy a reality, Pillars of Eternity 2 is all that and more. And by and more, I mean and a boat. It's like Baldur's Gate on a boat. It's a pretty good pitch, honestly. It's just like you get to do all your dope role-playing adventure stuff, and you get to be captain of a boat. Particular detail that I really liked was that when you are in the overworld map and you move from land to sea, you're in your boat, the soundtrack switches from like the typical majestic fantasy score to sea shanties, sung by your crew that are all written within the fiction of the game world, which I thought was just awesome. And got me some weird shanties stuck in my head. No. It's not how stream work. But I'll tell you what, this is these streams generally I save as a video afterwards, so if you really think it was important, go get it after. This is the guy I used for the thumbnail. His head is sort of tilted to the side. I was sort of trying to do the same thing in the shot. I don't know if that came across. Oh man, I think there's a new episode of Tigtone tonight. Quite enjoying that series. Tale of a quest-addicted adventurer cares not for the virtue of this task completion so long as he completes his quest. And got executive producer Blake Henderson of The Workaholics. So that's a neat little treat for me. Because I like that guy. It's good to see him doing some. I had been thinking recently, like, oh, I guess, I mean, Adam Devine's been in movies and stuff, and I think Anders has been doing some acting stuff. But I was like, oh, I guess Blake sort of, fell back to he was doing a clothing line and stuff, and I was like, oh, I guess he kind of got out of the showbiz. Now here he is doing executive producing a cartoon for Adult Swim. That's excellent. Good for him. Oh shit. Gotta be a bit more careful putting my fingers all over this guy. I'm kind of undoing some of my work as I do it. Just a bit more. Damn it. Come on. All right. Should do. That should do. No. I need to do more. I keep thinking I'm done and then finding more spots that I'm like, oh, need to highlight that. Gotta highlight that. Oh, I'm gonna highlight that. Blah, blah, blah. What? Alrighty. Just gonna compare this guy to one of his friends. See. Good enough for Jazz. Yeah, good enough for Jazz. Maybe a bit more. I want to do this. Ooh, Barky Dog. Not letting him out. Let him out before the stream. Point. I wouldn't have to go let the dog out during the stream. Barky Dog. Yeah. I guess this would be like minor spoilers for Pillars of Eternity 2, but I'm gonna try and make this like as vague as possible, so it's not really spoilers. I ended up with a very strange ending to that game. There's effectively an ending that you can go for in that game where you end the world. You cause the end of the world. And like I think while that ending has like a shortened equivalent to one of the epilogues that you would get with a normal ending, I'm pretty sure that's like a non-canon ending that like if you end the world in Pillars of Eternity 2, you will not be able to import that save into Pillars of Eternity 3 if they do it. And so the thing is, one of the dialogue options for ending the world is like, because basically like a god asks you after you try to do that, they're like, why? Like, but effectively the game being like, why would you play this entire game just to be like, just to sort of throw the whole world in the dumpster? And one of the dialogue options is this perfect, like, fucking Anakin Skywalker emo kid response that is like, I just hate all life. I hate it so much. Like that sort of shit. And like, it's so funny to get to the end of the game and say that I did that. I was like, that's fucking unbelievable. And like the game basically gives you this response of like, well, that's fucking stupid. And it acts as though it is going to ignore that sort of statement you made. And it acts as if it will not end the world as a result of your actions. However, if you continue to let that ending play out, your statement will then, sow a seed of doubt in the mind of a god, which then leads to the end of the world. And so that's like a sort of non-canon ending as far as I can tell. And it's the ending I would have gotten, except that, like I say, the game sort of behaves as if it's not going to allow you to end the world. And because it behaved that way, there was another god that I had a favor to call in with. And after it said like, no, I'm not going to end the world, you get this option that's like, do you want to call in your favor, basically? And so I called in my favor, which resulted in like basically a giant kaiju battle. And that ends with like a canon ending wherein the world does not end. So that would be the ending for the save that I would be importing into Pillars of Eternity 3, ostensibly. But I don't know how the game is going to account for the fact that I effectively saved the world out of spite, because I thought the game was not letting me destroy the world. Like, I was the threat and the savior all in my own sort of weird situation. Highlighting. I like to highlight. I like to highlight when the paint work good. This paint dry. No need for wet palette. Just keep paint. Just keep painting. 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 I'm playing Warframe a fair bit lately. Ooh, I wonder if I got some stuff finished in my Foundry right now, actually. Warframe has a very robust phone app that I can use to check my status right now if I wanted. But I'm a bit focused right now. Trying to maintain my focus. One thing I would like to do in the future, well, it's a long way off because I've got 3 squads assembled after this one, and 4 kits that are unassembled, waiting after that. One thing I would like to do is like some American Revolution era guys, muskets and stuff. That'd be fun. Some Hamilton shit. Hamilton. 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 Y'all like Hamilton? Hamilton's pretty good. It's weird. The weird thing about like Hamilton, this musical taking off so hugely, is that when I was in high school, I took an American history course, and my teacher had like the biggest hard on for Hamilton. He was just like singing his praises all the fucking time. This was way before the musical. Like, you just like, I don't know, that guy tuned into whatever Lin-Manuel Miranda tuned into, because that guy was always talking about how great Hamilton was. And I imagine he's been quite vindicated, the word. I imagine he's sitting pretty now that there's a popular hip opera based around his beloved topic. Probably helps him get some cool points, which is, imagine what you're always looking for as a teacher. Gotta get some cool points. Gotta get some cool points or some King K. Rool points. Where did that come from? It's probably relevant because of Smash Bros. I only played a little bit of that new Smash Bros, but I hear King K. Rool is quite the menace. Ganondorf is crazy powerful too. I'm not really into those games, but I guess they're like there's such a craze and a social phenomenon that I sort of get exposed to them one way or another. And the newest one I sort of went out of my way to try was at a friend's place, and I asked if we could try that new Smash. I don't know. I don't have so much to say about it as I do about things like Pillars of Eternity 2. You know what could have used more of in Pillars of Eternity 2? So being basically a Dungeons and Dragons game, they have sort of analogs for all the classic D&D monsters that you need. And one of them, so basically the Pillars of Eternity version of Mind Flayers are like these cool psychic spider things called Vithrax, and they're awesome. I love them. I felt not enough Vithrax content in Pillars of Eternity 2. I have not seen the new Mary Poppins. I have no interest in seeing a new Mary Poppins film. Man, I still got to see Mandy. That's the next one I really got to see. So I got to keep that in my head ahead of like new things. New things is cool, but there's generally like I have an ear to the ground for things that like really I should see. Like Dread fell into that category. John Wick fell into that category, and yeah, they always are basically. I like them as much as I expect to, so feels good. This guy's got a bit of that white lip going on. This time I reset this brush a bit. Oh shit! Did Lin-Manuel Miranda direct it or something? Was this? Is he in it? Should probably get some stronger paint thinner. Don't have any paint thinner right now. Will have to suffice. He's in it. Okay. I don't know if Lin-Manuel Miranda being in something is enough for me to really get excited. Especially if the thing does not particularly appeal to me in any way. I don't know. I don't know what could spark my interest in a Mary Poppins film. Remember, I liked Mary Poppins when I was a kid, but like, I don't think any of that. I don't think that any of that goodwill holds up. Guess they're hoping it'll pay big dividends at the box office. Probably will too. Fuck. Need to legalize glue, man. It's got other uses beyond its mind-expanding properties. Watched that classic episode of Xavier last night. It had Snoop Dogg in it. It always struck me that Xavier Renegade Angel not only got a second season, but got Snoop Dogg as a cameo, as a voice guest, as a guest voice in said second season. And it was in like arguably what may be my favorite episode of the show. I don't know. It's pretty good. Free range manibalism. What could distract people who love sports? Sports, 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 sports. That's not right. Yeah, I think this guy will do. Good enough for Jazz. There is no new Xavier Renegade Angel. I was just watching it with some friends last night. What if Mary Poppins was a Time Lord? Isn't Time Lord like? Is that what Doctor Who is? Is that what the Doctor is? I'm not very in on that whole franchise. Man, if there was new Xavier Renegade Angel, that would be pretty fucking next level. There are like certain things that would, you know, these days you see some crazy shit. You see some games getting made or re-released that you never thought you'd see again, or whatever. And to that end, there's one thing that if it got re-released at this point that would truly surprise me and like blow me away, and I'd be like, whoa, what? So if they brought back Eternal Darkness, game for the GameCube, it was mad beyond its time. Almost done with this last guy. And it's actually the last step for these guys. After this, it's off to the bases. Hey, all right, pulled one out. Off to the bases. Good one, me. What I mean by that is I will be putting them on a diorama base. Taking advantage of the large quantity of models I have by making a larger piece. Ooh, you know what's news is there is new True Detective, and I hear it's pretty good. I'm hesitant to get into it because if it is pretty good, I don't know. I got pretty wildly into that first one. I wasn't in a great place when the first one was on, though, so maybe I don't know. Fuck. Can I get invested in this toxic male again? This time he's black. It should be interesting. I think that's the thesis of True Detective Season 3. Black dude can be toxic. Nobody challenge on that one, I think. Or maybe it's that a black actor toxic masculinity look cool, just like Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey can. And on that topic, I think it's really just so perfect that the people to do the really huge True Detective takedown were fucking BoJack Horseman. I wonder about is one Comic-Con a while back, they were Jonan Vasquez, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with the guys from the Workaholics as the voices of 3 of the turtles, and then I think it was like Ben Schwartz of the other one. For the case, like it was really like it was awesome looking. It was super fun. I think like Jonan Vasquez, his weird, whimsical grossness and morbidness was a good fit for these slacker superheroes who live in a sewer. Not even slacker superheroes, but like teenagers. I guess that makes them slackers. They're not exactly wunderkinds. Anyways, yeah, there was that trailer. I'm sure it's still up on YouTube. It was great. Whatever happened to that? Whatever. At least we got Takedown. Takedown's excellent. Takedown, the old, I don't know if he called the pilot, but the pre-show short film that led to its creation. Yeah, a lot of interesting talent on it. It had like Hannibal Buress plays a talking tree for like one line. The other guy from Red Letter Media to do the guy who does the really long reviews, Mr. Plinkett. His voice. Anyway, excited to see how the series develops out of that initial starting point, which hopefully we'll get to see a bit of tonight, I think. Because last week was the first episode. Almost done. Home stretch. Excellent. All right. This has been a very successful experiment, I would say. About failed experiments. I think a lot about Dragon Age 2, which I view as a sort of failed experiment in game design. really respect it for really trying to tell a story in a role-playing story in a new way by telling it over time rather than space, making it about, you're just in this city, but it changes in sort of eras, but rather than your classic journey across the land, even Pillars of Eternity 2 falls into. However, I think it was a foolhardy decision, though. I don't know, a respectable one, to attempt to then literally reuse dungeon layouts from previous eras. I think you could have done something with that maybe, but they obviously didn't. That's where things sort of fell apart, I feel. Not really anything else to show you guys at this point. I'm just cleaning off my brush. Just got a bit of weight on it. Should be fine. So it'll be interesting going forward. I wonder if I'll pick up more Citadel paints to do these kits that I'm kind of jazzed about. I guess I've got a Soviet squad over there that I'm interested to do, but it's not one of my top priorities. So maybe I'll do that with the paints I have, and depending how it goes, I may switch to Citadel exclusively for my own ease of use. But for your viewing pleasure, I'm going to do a quick rundown of all these dudes. This guy. God, I cannot see the screen at all. This lighting is not helping me. Probably not helping you guys either. This guy. This guy. Ooh.